Good afternoon, Dr. Jessica. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
This is our first speaker that we'll be having for Bringing Light to Darkness. This summit is about healing journeys after sexual assault. I'm a survivor, and one of the tricky things that I've had to figure out is just how do you heal after such a traumatic event? And over the years, I've met some fascinating women who have helped me along my journey. And even though some of them are in California, like Dr. Jessica Parker here, I've been able to find some other similar practitioners out here on the East Coast in Pennsylvania. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jessica Parker, and she is um, recording with us today from Oakland, California.
Yeah, hi. Hello, everyone. I'm an acupuncturist and a functional medicine doctor, and I practice out of Northern California. I actually have two locations now. I'm in Oakland, California, and I also work out of Nevada City, which is in California. It gets confusing being called Nevada City. But it's a small town in the foothills north of, like in between Sacramento and Tahoe. And so I've been practicing for about 15 years. I really believe in integrative medicine as a path towards really true healthcare. I've had a variety of experiences working in my private practice, in hospitals in both the US and in China. And what I've found, really when we combine acupuncture, Eastern medicine, lab work, and using some conventional medical technology, that's really when we have the opportunity to get to the root of the issue. So today I'll be sharing with all of you how acupuncture and lab work can be a really powerful combination to address PTSD. And maybe many of you know, but acupuncture, it's a 3,000 plus really year old medical system, and it views trauma not as an isolated mental health issue. It's really just it's a disruption of the body's entire energetic systems. And acupuncture itself offers a really profound approach towards PTSD, and that differs fundamentally from conventional medicine. Um, so we're really, again, looking at the body's entire energetic system. And, when my patients always ask me or say, well, I guess I think these symptoms are just all in my head, I like to remind everyone that, thankfully your head is attached to your body. And, in Eastern medicine, we really understand that the body and the mind, they aren't separate. They're not separate entities. They're completely integrated. And when I see patients with PTSD in my clinic, I'm not just treating symptoms. I'm not just treating anxiety, flashback, insomnia. I'm really addressing a body caught in a state of psychological chaos. And when we're understanding PTSD through an acupuncture and an Eastern medicine perspective, it involves several key imbalances of what we're looking for, and every individual is different, and that's what's so beautiful about when we're treating the body from an Eastern medicine perspective. Um, but there's often a disruption of what we call the Shen, and that's kind of a combination of the spirit and the mind. And this often becomes ungrounded and agitated. And so it manifests often with typical symptoms of insomnia, emotional volatility, anxiety, hypervigilance. Those are common with PTSD, or turning inward and things like that. And so, second, when we're treating the Shen, we're often seeing significant liver qi stagnation, which is when the body's energy becomes stuck in patterns of tension, irritability, and often anger and frustration. And then third, there's often typically a kidney imbalance, and this manifests as a deep-seated fear or difficulty processing threats appropriately, really linked to the cortisol response. And so what's fascinating about how, perfectly these Eastern medicine patterns align with what we now know as like neurobiology of trauma. Western medicine is finally catching up to this sort of ancient form of medicine, but the dysregulation of the autonomic nervous system in PTSD creates, exactly what these patterns of our ancestors have described, for thousands of years. It's just using different language. For a long time, when I worked in hospitals and was trying to integrate myself and, talking with other doctors, I wanted to use Western medical terms. I wanted to talk about chi as like, it's this electrical impulse in the fascia, but I've really transformed the way that I talk about what I do as an acupuncturist using these traditional terms, using liver qi stagnation. Because I think it's time that in Western medicine we start to embrace that it's just a different language of talking about the same thing. So I do like to use these traditional, more, Chinese medicine, Eastern medicine patterns when I'm talking about it. And to wrap our Western medical mind, sometimes we need to use more of that terminology too. But there are some protocols that I do use. And again, protocol is an interesting term in Eastern medicine because every single person is different. You could have three people with similar symptoms of insomnia, anxiety, palpitations or whatever. And they are actually, from an Eastern medicine perspective, could be completely different ways of treating. We base that on pulse. The pulse is a really powerful way to understand what's happening on a deeper level in the body. The tongue is an incredible way to see what's going on. It's almost the extension of digestion. And digestion is huge when it comes to understanding how the body is processing macro and micronutrients. So we use these systems in order to understand what's happening individually for each person. But there are several approaches that have been proven, especially, effective within these protocols and certain points and patterns and meridians that we use. One of the most powerful tools it's called the 8 extra meridians. So each organ system, like the liver and the kidney, they have their own associated points on the body. And we also have these 8 extra meridians, particularly called the Du Mai and the Ren Mai. These are unrestrained vessels. They're sort of the weave between those other organ system meridians. They help regulate the connection between the brain and the body. They really are great at restoring balance to what we understand in more the Western medical term, the HPA axis. So there's a great point. It's on the neck. It's called stomach 9. It's translated as human's prognosis. And it's really transformative in the sense that I call it like I've had it up to here point, when we're at this point, we just can't take another thing. Often when that sensation when you're about to cry or you feel like you have this stuckness in your throat or like anxiety in the throat, this is an incredible point of just relaxing, not only again, connecting the head to the body, but also relaxing tension in this area and moving some of that emotion out of that stuckness. Sometimes I use it for people that just feel like they're choking, and this point, again, it connects the head and the body, and it's literally reestablishing that communication between the brain and the body that trauma often disrupts. A lot of what acupuncture does is just a way of helping the body recommunicate. The heart channel is a really great point, or a channel. There's several points on the heart channel that are great and crucial for calming the Shen. Again, the mind, body, spirit connection. And it really, there's a point on the wrist, heart 7. I have people massage that point a lot. And this is great for really dramatically reducing anxiety. It helps improve sleep. And often from the first treatment, I'll have people, I'll do a few points, especially heart 7 here, or have people do this at home. And it's just little circles and massaging here. And again, this is an incredible point to help relax the Shen from anxiety. So kidney and liver points, as I mentioned, again, they really help address underlying fear, stagnation in the body that often maintains with PTSD. And so when we're treating these systems, we're not just managing symptoms. Again, we're really addressing the root of the psychological pattern that's sort of keeping people in the sort of trapped in their trauma response. And while, acupuncture is incredibly powerful on its own, yeah, I've found that integrating functional lab testing takes the treatment to a whole new level, and it really allows me and the patient to see exactly how trauma is manifesting really uniquely within the body's physiology. So, for instance, there's a basic blood draw that I often have people run, and I also will have people do an adrenal stress profile. It's a saliva test, and it sort of maps out cortisol patterns throughout the day. And this is really helpful in revealing like disrupted patterns in PTSD with that chronic fight or flight. Sometimes we see that cortisol and it's just chronically elevated. It creates this feeling of being constantly on the edge. Fight or flight is incredible for survival. Like our body needs that, but we don't need to be that all the time. And so we often, when we do these tests, we'll see chronically elevated cortisol or we'll see depleted cortisol. And that helps us understand, profound fatigue, also issues with insomnia when we have deep fatigue that also often disrupts what's happening with cortisol throughout the night. And then the ratio between cortisol and how it affects the rest of our hormones, especially DHEA, which is an androgen. And this is really helpful in understanding how crucial that information is about our body's resilience. And in PTSD, this ratio it's often really imbalanced. And depending on how cortisol is responding throughout the day, during the yin and yang phases of the day, this helps me understand how the body's stress response has then become overwhelmed and how I can treat each individual. Again, if it's really high in the morning or if it's for one person, it's really low in the morning for another person, I can adjust the treatment based on the time of day that they're having those responses. And a simple blood draw, again, similar to like what you get at a physical, when it shows so much more when we're really looking at it and analyzing it from an Eastern medicine and functional medicine perspective. It's far beyond just normal or abnormal. When we're looking at it from that perspective, we're looking at how every system is working together and what is optimal. Blood sugar markers, they often frequently show that dysregulation in PTSD because chronic stress really triggers glucose. When we're in that fight or flight mode, again, emergency mode, we need more sugar and glucose to get through the quick actions, the being able to use our limbs and our frontal cortex in a more anxious kind of a way. And this will throw off blood sugar. It also will throw off then how we actually absorb deeper macronutrients like proteins, lipids, fats, and then the micronutrients like iron and B12. Like, so when our body is in emergency mode, it just is like, go, go, go. I need sugar, sugar, sugar. And then it slows down the ability to get that deep level of nourishment. Thyroid panels, again, are also really important. I always add this in a blood draw beyond just TSH. That's often what most conventional doctors will run, just TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. But we really need to understand what's happening with the conversion of T4 and T3, the other hormones involved. And, with many PTSD people, we're showing often we'll show normal TSH, but that conversion of how the other hormones are acting because of the adrenal response, that's what's contributing to their symptoms. So it's important to really look beyond just a TSH. And they're very affordable tests. I mean, I think to add, when if you're going through someone like me who runs labs or orders labs, I mean, to add a full thyroid panel, it's like $20. So it's not expensive testing that you can do in order to get this detailed information. And what makes, this approach in general just so effective, this integrative approach, and it just allows for more precision. It's helpful for me to really see these specific patterns in lab work, understanding it how it means how it represents the body in an Eastern medicine perspective, I can adjust my acupuncture treatment accordingly in that way. Again, for patients with elevated morning cortisol, with anxiety, I might focus on calming the liver and the heart systems. For someone with depleted cortisol and fatigue, I'm wanting to maybe do more kidney tonification or spleen and digestive support. And really, what's remarkable about all of this is how quickly patients respond, to treatment when we're tailoring it this way. And again, we can do all this with pulse and tongue. The lab work is an added benefit, and I've really embraced incorporating that in my practice. But going to the basics, really just tapping into what's happening in the body physically is humongous. And I just wanted to share a brief example. I worked with a patient, had been struggling with PTSD for years, and their lab work showed classic patterns, elevated morning cortisol. Again, that's our emergency hormone. And so our bodies are going to prioritize that survival over everything else. So again, if we're in that constant fight or flight, that cortisol it will continue to pump out cortisol, but it will start to deplete the rest of our hormones. And our other hormones really grow and thrive in that rest and digest, the parasympathetic mode. So we saw this chronic pumping out of cortisol in this patient, and their DHEA was very low because of that. We also saw blood sugar dysregulation, like a tendency now towards diabetes and metabolic syndrome, and then that poor conversion of the T3 to T4 in the thyroid related to adrenal stress. So I designed a treatment plan with this patient, and twice a week acupuncture, really targeting nutrition support as well, heavily focusing on those extraordinary meridians. And within 6 weeks, they reported significant improvement in anxiety and sleep. We had follow-up labs to show that we're starting to see this more normalization of their cortisol patterns, better blood sugar metabolism. And, we still had a lot of work to do. We still continue to work together, but this was really validating for them to be able to see their symptoms shift and have this tangible resource of lab work that shows that they're really starting to improve. And really, this is a big piece to it. I feel like it's really empowering for people to be able to really understand that they can literally see how their trauma is affected in their physiology. And it's validating to understand what's going on at that deeper root level. For many, this is a time of understanding that their symptoms just aren't in their head, and they represent real, physiological changes. And so that follow-up testing and those changes in symptoms are incredible. And this understanding, it just, again, it transforms how we all can relate to our own bodies rather than feeling betrayed by our symptoms. This is a way to begin to kind of collaborate with your body and collaborate with your physiology and learn that, like, these symptoms like insomnia, emotional, outbursts, they aren't character flaws. They're actual biological responses to trauma, and this can all be rebalanced. So that's it for me today, but I'm happy to answer any questions. And I love talking about this, and I love talking about acupuncture and Eastern medicine. I have an open door policy if anyone wants to reach out to me to have any questions about any of this. If you're a practitioner, I love teaching acupuncturists, how to read labs and how to understand them from this perspective. And I'm always available in any way.
And what's the best way to reach you?
I can pop my email into the chat, and we can send that out. That's probably the easiest way. And I'll also add my website too.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. That was very interesting. I remember when, gosh, I was at the beginning of my healing journey and I didn't know where to go. And a friend of mine said, if you don't know where to go get acupuncture. So I did. And I started seeing Maureen, in Santa Cruz. And then when I moved up to Berkeley, I saw you in Oakland, and oh my goodness. I mean, I don't know what I would have done without either of you. Um,
Yeah.
you're so talented, and it was just fascinating. I was going through the legal process during that time period, and it was really challenging. And I was having a hard time with digestion and food, and the stress in my body would just, at times, just force it back up again. And I wasn't able to keep food down. And it was very frustrating. But once I started seeing you, and I remember you were working on my stomach area a lot, I was able to overcome that. And I'll never forget it. I'm so grateful for the work that you do. So if you're in Northern California, go see Dr. Jessica Parker. She's at Root and Stem Clinic in Oakland, in Nevada City. Thank you so much again for joining us today. It means a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks for putting this on.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope we can reach out to some people and encourage them to work on their healing journeys and get better and feel better. It's really draining to walk around in pain. So, yeah, try and do something about it, and go see somebody. So thank you. So that brings us to our second speaker, and her name is Cristin Garrigan. And I'm going to share my screen here. Let me just